Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Dave Emmons, Strange Reality. I come to you, I guess, twice a week with two different shows, sometimes three shows, and maybe some shorts. But I just want to ask everybody out there, not ask them, but just let them know that, hey, we're going to get through all this rough stuff that's going on in the world. And it seems like it always gets worse each day. You have these internet people, and I've said this before, these internet people are telling you, well, you better get some food because you're going to die tomorrow. This is clickbait issues that these people are doing, and I don't appreciate it. And I like to have people tell the truth. That's why I have guests on here who know what they're talking about. They've written books, they have a specialty, and they've been background trained. They're investigating their topics, and also they've had some experiences. And I reach out for people, and this guy that I have today is very interesting. I've been reading a lot of his bio, and he's worked with a lot of big names, and we'll get through to that. And the guy that I'm talking about, after we get through and we all take it easy and just try to get through life. I heard a guy the other day. I'm getting there. Okay, but there's a guy the other day who was crying actually, and I said, "Oh my goodness," he was crying about he was depressed and he where's he going to get his food for his kids and his family? And he said things are going to come to an end. We're really going to go to an. I said, "Oh, come on, stop it, crybaby." Let's get serious about all this stuff and let's calm down and cool it down. But here's a guest on the Strange Reality Show that he has a lot of credibility. He's done a lot of work in this field, and he knows what he's talking about. Craig Campobasso, and Campobasso, Campobasso. And he has multiple award-winning filmmaker and Emmy-nominated casting director. Craig Campobasso was 15 when he started. It's funny, we all start like in the teens when we have these experiences or we have these whims about doing something. He started in the entertainment business. His young acting career was off to a great start. He landed his first national commercial for McDonald's chicken sandwich and spoke his first line of dialogue to Tuesday Weld in a Mao, MOW Mao. Oh, Tuesday Weld. Yeah, I remember her. After graduating from high school at age 17, Craig went to work behind the scenes on such blockbuster film classics as Frank Herbert's Dune, directed by David Lynch, and two Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, Conan, The Destroyer, and Total Recall. That's some great credentials. He began his casting career as Steven Spielberg, Amazing Stories. He received the Emmy nomination for Outstanding Casting for a series on David E. Kelly's Picket Fences. Craig casting career spans 3 decades. Craig's mother, Marie Donna King Campobasso, told him from the time that she was pregnant with him that she knew he would become a writer. Wow, she must have been really good at telling the future. Craig directed, wrote, and produced the short film Stranger at the Pentagon. I want to ask you questions about that too, which was adapted from the popular UFO book authored by the late Dr. Frankie Stranges. And after the production, the short film collected accolades. In September 2014, it won Best Sci-Fi Film at the Burbank International Film Festival, selling out 275 seats, a first in the festival. In 2015, it won a Remy Award and a World Fest Houston International Film Festival for Best Sci-Fi Short. Oh, Craig, kudos, buddy. Craig has appeared on many radio shows, including Coast to Coast. George Norrie has been on guest on Open Minds Talk show with Regina Meredith, Beyond Belief, hosted by George Norrie. Craig has also appeared on History Channel's Ancient Aliens. We all know that one, where Giorgio Tsoukalos is the main ancient astronaut theorist. The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga. These are books, and the Hurd Revolution, Other Warring Creatures, is the fourth book in the series. His book, The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, The Ultimate Guide to Greys, Reptilians, Hybrids, and Nordics, was released on January 2021. It's an amazing bestseller. I bet it was. It looks interesting. His latest book, the UFO Hotspot Compendium, All of the Places to Visit Before You Die or are Abducted, was released from MUFON Books October 2022, as in October. His film, Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, the documentary, will be released later this summer, 2024. And you were at the Desert Convention in Arizona. Uh, Craig Campobasso, here I am, not don't have it in front of me. I would, uh, Craig Campobasso, take it away and tell me what's up new with you.
Well, me and my production team, we did go to Contact in the Desert because we did a special sneak peek screening of the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac documentary. And so we had about 500 people in the audience, and it's an hour and a half. And afterwards, we did a panel with some of the people in the film, JJ and Desiree Hurtak, Paul Hynek, the son of Alan J. Hynek, who was head
Mm-hmm.
of Project Blue Book. My biological father was also a part of Project Blue Book as well.
Really?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's see, who else did we have on the panel? Vivian Chauvet and Kathy Porter, Christopher Bledsoe, who has a very hot book out now called UFO of God. And anyway, it went really well. I'm very pleased with the way the film turned out. And it was 3 years in the making, and we got over a minute standing ovation. So that was very good, and I got it on camera.
Wow, that's great.
So
And
yeah.
what part did you play in it, Craig? I mean, you did
Well,
you
I
played
wrote, produced, and directed it.
Oh, okay, you did it all. All right.
Yeah, I did it all, but I did have other producers
Yeah.
along with me, three other producers uh, who I've worked with before. They're all award-winning producers.
Hmm.
And some of them did other duties, including editing, post-production, supervising, that kind of thing, because that's also other places where their specialties lie.
Were these documentary style movies or were they, I guess, scripted movie type things?
Well, I'm just going to tell you, it's not your average documentary film. In fact, I would put it in a category all its own because it looks nothing like what you've seen before,
Okay. And I'm gonna
right? And
yeah, I'm gonna hold up a picture, Craig, of
oh yeah, there
yeah,
we go.
yeah, and
That was the
that's the
sneak
book.
preview there. Did I give you that when you were there?
I got it on your promo listing on email, and I have to apologize, and I apologize to you already that I've uploaded 3 or 4 of your pictures on your books, and my files lost them because I cleaned some of my files, and then all of a sudden they just went all over the place. And I know people don't want to watch me with my little mouse going all over the place, so
All
I said
over the
I
place.
wanted
Well,
to
here, I'll
show
just
them.
show
Yeah, show
them.
the book. That's great.
There we go. There's the
Yeah.
Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, the guide to Greys, Reptilians, Hybrids, and Nordics.
Hmm.
And then this is the latest book, the UFO Hotspot Compendium, all the places to visit before you die or are abducted. I love the
Was
subtitle. I just think it's hysterical.
Did you get a lot of the information from MUFON? I thought I saw MUFON.
Yeah, they're both MUFON books.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, how the UFO hotspot came about is the head of MUFON sent out to all the state directors to nominate their favorite hotspots.
Hmm.
I accumulated everything, and then of course I added my own favorite hotspots in there, and then I worked with if it was like an older case and it was reopened, I
Hmm.
would work with those MUFON investigators to bring the latest knowledge to that particular hotspot
Right.
and what they found. Um, we also have some Project Blue Books, um, final uh, what they felt, what it was, like for instance, the Lonnie Zamora case out of
Right.
Socorro, New Mexico. Everybody believed, including the military, J. Allen Hynek, everybody believed that story was true. there just wasn't physical evidence,
Right. And I think
right?
a lot of people thought it was the military messing around. They had a craft, experimental craft. They landed and they got out and they,
Well, it wouldn't have been that because they were two little small aliens
mm,
that got out, and that's what he saw, and that's what flipped him out for the rest of his life.
yeah,
He was never the same. Um, Erica Burley is the woman who painted the big giant mural of him there along the side of the road.
right.
She was commissioned, uh, and she spoke to his wife, and after he had passed, because she was going to be painting it, and his wife said that he was never the same, and that it basically did ruin his life.
Yeah.
It totally ruined his life. But here's the thing: it was seen by many other witnesses as well. And it was also seen, if people are interested in that story, I'll tell you, you can read about all the updated stuff in UFO Hotspot Compendium. But also, if you remember, one of my favorite shows was Unsolved Mysteries.
Yes.
Um, they did an episode on it and actually interviewed Lonnie Zamora, which was very, very fascinating because he did interviews, but he didn't do a lot of them on camera. And this one was on camera. And anyway, it's just fascinating. So in the book, for places like the Lonnie Zamora incident, if you want to know where Valiant Thor's craft is located, or where George Adamski first met Orthon, or where Travis Walton was, the exact coordinates. All of those places, I give you the exact coordinates in the book,
That's
so that if you really want to go and visit those spots, you can go directly to those spots
right.
and visit those spots. And what's great about the book is you get the whole story of it, right? You get the in summation of either Project Blue Book or MUFON. And then if there are specialized places where you can visit, where to go to do your sky watching. Um, and some places you need a reservation, or uh, to see things like the Integratron out in Landers, California, which is another big UFO hotspot place,
Right.
and along with Giant Rock. That's the very first one in the UFO hotspot, one of my favorite places to visit, where lots of
Greg,
things have been
is
spotted.
yeah, is there a bottom line in all this? Is they talk about there's a line that goes across I guess the US. It's it's in the I what is it? I can't think of the parallel. Uh it's in the they call it goes right across where my area is at.
Like
Same,
a ley line? A
yeah,
ley line?
ley line. It goes right across like the center of the country. It goes through like New Mexico and Arizona. And I've traveled out there quite a bit. And I've been close to some of those places you talked about in your book. But I'll put this in a narrative too, so people can find that book, and I'll put the websites and stuff, so they don't have to keep up with where these books are, what the name of them are or where they're going to be located. I'll put them in a narrative for you. Uh, I wanted to read off this what about the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, the documentary that you had. It said this is an ultimate field guide to 82 extraterrestrial species that populate and I guess the galaxy you're saying, and then explores the origins, physical characteristics, consciousness abilities, dimensional capacities, belief systems, and the species. Whatever the species fall into two categories: benevolent races, in which are the good for the humanity, whose goals include protecting people, helping people, and then malevolent races, which are responsible for abductions and cloning. The intergalactic expose will entertain all those interested in UFOs and Star Trek and Marvel and Star Wars. Roswell in the book delves deep into the real extraterrestrials are and on what they're doing here on Earth. Now, the bad ones, the malevolent ones, who are those? So are those the reptilians? Is that what we've been told?
Well, let me first tell you how the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac book came about.
Okay.
And then I'll go into that because people need to understand where the information came from. Is when they originally approached me to write the book, they knew that I had been studying contactee cases for well over 30 years, right? And in book forms, I think I went through over 65 of them, including ones that are more current,
Mm-hmm.
where I was able to go and talk with the contactee. Some had actual photographs that they had taken of the extraterrestrials as well. So what I did is then I gained permission from either the publishers or the contactees to retell what the extraterrestrials told them because so much of the information was extremely fascinating, right? Like where they came from, why they were visiting Earth,
Mm-hmm.
some what they eat. I mean, some races don't even eat solid foods. They liquefy things, and over the years, like they used to have teeth, now they have rudimentary teeth, and their mouths have grown smaller.
Mm-hmm.
But this is just something that they, over the years, just became liquefied everything. And so this one race, and I can't remember if it was the Kardashians or the Clermers, they they came here because what they would do is they were in the Amazon and they actually interacted with the Amazon peoples, um, because they were taking their fruits and seeds and then they were grafting it and making new ones with it there. So they were there in the 60s for quite a long time and then they would go back home and then they'd come back and forth, ever since. Just, simple things like that. And, some who come here and that a part of their training is that they have to live and work on Earth as a Earth person because most of them do look human like
Right.
us and
I
can
heard that.
pass
Yes.
for us. A good friend of mine who is still alive um, knew a couple of people from the inner Earth. She still talks to them, and they came up and they lived in San Francisco for a couple of years. There was another gentleman, I believe he was a clermer. Let me just see. No, he's not a clermer.
Now these names you're coming up with, this is what the witnesses gave you, right? Yeah.
This is what the witnesses said. The Kardashians, um, the one gentleman uh, actually lived and worked in Italy for several years, and he sort of glommed on to a small group. And in one guy in particular in this group that was interested in learning about the universe, not that he said he was from somewhere else, but they knew that when he talked about things, that he was knowledgeable. One guy, this extraterrestrial being said was a star seed from where he came from. So he ultimately came out and told him who he was,
Hmm. Well, that's
right?
the book that Dr. David Jacobs wrote, said they
Right.
walk amongst us. That's my favorite book because I've met three people, and
Yeah.
100% I knew, and then there's two that I really think they were, and I actually took pictures of them. But that's why I was asking you, and I met a couple of reptilians. That's why I jumped ahead of your game on this book, and I'm sorry about
Mhm.
that. But that's why I asked you about reptilians. Uh, you have 82 species.
Right.
How did you
There's
come up with that?
way more. There's way more than 82, but I had to come in under 300 pages per the publisher.
I see.
And so I was accumulating all the races. And then I was listening to Paul Hellyer speak, the former Canadian Minister of Defense, who came out and spoke that he has the knowledge that they have visited us and that they are on Earth. And he said that he knew of 82 races that were. And I thought, well, let me see if I could fit 82 in and just make it an homage
Mm.
to Paul Hellyer. And I was able to fit 82 in, but I actually, in fact, at that time had 120. There's way more. And since I wrote the book, the amount of people that have written me about different beings that they've seen, right? And that they're in contact with is just staggering. It's just staggering. So what's interesting is when we open up a dialogue like this and we start talking, people aren't afraid to talk about it. You know, I'm in the film business, have been since I was 15, been casting for a very long time. I know lots of famous actors, working actors, regular actors, and um, and I would say some that have either starred or are starring on TV shows have had face-to-face contact with extraterrestrials, and all are not good. One was trying to abduct one's daughter,
Mm.
and she fought it. Like literally, the being had one arm of her daughter, she had the other, and she said, "You are not taking my daughter."
Which species was that?
Those were Greys.
Grace. Okay.
Those were Greys. And what's interesting is she lived on a large property, and the ship was on the front lawn, and her neighbors woke up with the lights and everything, and they saw the ship on the lawn as well. And she said after that, they never came back.
Mm.
Usually they do,
Yeah.
right? In these scenarios, they do. I mean, there's another, another was an agent that I was close to at the time, and he would wake up in the middle of the night, like if he's laying flat, a Gray would be like here, staring at him, this close to his face.
Mm-hmm.
And he would totally flip out. I mean, just to see him and the fear that was in his eyes and that kind of thing. And the reason they do that is because once they get locked on to your eyes when they're open, doing a telepathic hypnosis, which renders you immobile,
Right.
right? And then they can do their thing. Now, here's the thing: what we don't know is, are they malevolent or benevolent, right? Because there's a lot of beings, including Whitley Strieber now, who have been visited by the Greys, who who say they were abducted and probed, and genetics and things took, including Betty and Barney Hill,
Right.
right? And Betty Hill said up until the day she died that um, that they were benevolent, and they were sort of just checking on us as a species, like we might go out into the Serengeti and track an animal, right? Not that we're animals, and not saying that, just saying they're just sort of curious to see where we are in our biological evolution. And Whitley even says the same thing as well, that he now believes everything was in a positive light, including Travis Walton, who actually was had seen Greys and Nordics,
Right.
which we believe to be Pleiadians, because I know Travis. I'm very close with Jennifer Stein. I don't know if you ever had her on your show.
No.
She
No. I
she
haven't.
does all the Travis stuff. She did his short film. So in the Travis section, all the latest updated info is in the UFO Hotspot book. But what was just fascinating about that is that he realized that when the ship's energy had knocked him down, that when he was on the ship and woke up, he had this light thing on him, which he believed later was a healing device to cure him of this whatever radiation or something that he had. And when he was done is when they just put him back on the, put him back on the ground, and he was disoriented and all of
Yeah,
that.
he said
So
something about being electrocuted when they shot that beam down on him. I saw him in a convention twice. I met him. I even went to his house and shook his hand in his front yard and driving through Snowflake, Arizona. And
yeah,
nice guy, real nice guy. And
yeah,
I believe everything that's happened to him. There's been a lot of
yeah, me
controversy.
too.
But now these ones that are the bad boys, let's call them, like the grays. I run into a gray and I run it, but I have never had anything really bad happen to me, Craig. Uh, are there some people? I always say there's three different types of. Maybe you can fill me in because you said something a while ago that I've never heard before. Like they use their psychic energy to put you under hypnosis, and
Right.
I always thought that they use this magnetic energy to dumb you down and to turn you off your mind. And then you used hypnosis, and which is
Telepathic
telepathic. Yeah,
hypnosis. Yes.
that's kind of new in the abduction thing. I always thought there's three types of abductions: bedside. The second one is where they take you up in the ship, and the
Right.
third one is they freeze you. And I've been frozen
Yes.
6 years in a row at around
Yeah.
2 o'clock, 3:30, and they take your body somewhere else into another dimension, and they leave your body there, but your essence and your energy
Right.
and your
They take
conscious.
your astral body
Yeah.
and they make adjustments to your astral body. Now, in the, here's the good and the bad side of that. If they're good and they're helping you to evolve, right?
Hmm.
Then if they've taken your astral body, they can place enhancements in there that will help, because when that comes back into your body, it's going to get released into all the cellular memories inside of you.
Right.
Those will help to wake you up, which will help you to wake to your cosmic family, the bigger picture, right?
Hmm.
And then it will help to set you upon a spiritual path. Now, there's been instances where what they do is they take you and they lock your seven chakras so that you cannot bring in your five ascension chakras to ascend off the planet. That's how they dumb the planet down,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So they lock them. Here's the good news: you're a sovereign being. If you're feeling any of that is happening to you, you can merely meditate and you can unlock anything that they have done. You can, say, find protection prayers, find all of those kinds of things and do that. Now, all of the things that I've investigated, I've only seen a couple that have really bothered me. One man early on had eye implants,
Ooh.
and he came to my house. His voice is shaking, he's crying, and he's saying, "Look, look." And he pulls his eyes open, and I can see an apparatus that wraps all around his eyeball, all around the back. And he says, "They see everything I see." And he said, it's so creepy for me to feel and to know that. And he said, and I know if I were to go and get them surgically removed, they would just put them back.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the only time, I've ever um
Craig, you were able to see these
that
implants
I was,
yourself.
yeah. Well, a lot of my, Chris Bledsoe, who I told you about, who has
Right.
a UFO guy, he has an implant in his arm,
Hmm.
and he can take a magnet and go like this, and you see it bump up, and he can move it up and down, right?
Hmm.
So he's also he's in the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac documentary as well, because he's visited by the Lady of Light, and she comes in various time intervals throughout history. So um,
What does the lady in
our
light look like, Craig? What is she?
well, there's an actual picture of her in the book that he had an artist named Doug Aldo in New York.
Mhm.
So Mr. Ald allowed us to use the photo that he painted of her in the actual book and in the documentary as well.
Was she in a
So
robe? Was she in a white robe or whatever?
she's in a white robe. Yeah, she's in a white
I
robe
saw her
and
twice.
very, very ethereal.
Yeah, I
Yes.
saw her twice.
Very, very ethereal. Well, you'll have to go and look in the book and
Yeah,
see her
yeah.
picture.
I need to,
So
what you're saying is phenomenal. I've been talking to UFO and ET investigators sometimes, but you're giving me pieces of the puzzle that I haven't heard before in several.
there, it's interesting because the ET Species Almanac and the UFO Hotspot, there are lots of pieces of the puzzle,
Mhm.
right? And we all don't have every piece, but all of us has a piece. And when we all start talking and communicating about it, we start to see a whole bunch of the larger picture. And the good news is the larger picture is that the fully conscious beings in the universe have many consciousness raising programs going on Earth right now, right? Well, a lot of that is done through star seeds and indigos and crystal children and there's many other ways. We go into that explanation in the documentary, but um the thing is people say, well, why don't they just land? Right? Well, they can't just land because really it would cause terror and panic. So, what they're doing is over time, they're raising everyone up to where they are through star seeds and other beings and raising consciousness on Earth. And when that happens, then that cosmic society rejoins with Earth and then we're able to go and do travel across our constellation
Maybe have peace finally.
and have peace,
Yeah.
exactly, and
Uh,
have peace.
Craig, you mentioned star seeds, indigo kids. Do these people or young kids, do they know what they are? Do they understand?
Yes,
I hear
they
people
do.
call themselves star seeds, but do they know for sure? Because I heard there was a story written back in the 70s where this young girl, she's going to college and she had a colonel for a father. You might know the book. It's the name of a girl. Can't think of it, Priscilla or something like that. But she was exposed because of her eyes were bigger. She was a
Right.
hybrid. And so they had to take her off Earth. They had to remove her because she was found out. Is that true about any, I guess, hybrid or any ET that's walking amongst us? Once they're exposed, they have to leave?
Oh, I've heard so many different stories. I've known hybrids
Hmm.
where, like, I know several of them now. I have two of them in the documentary that tell you of their connection to that particular star family. Um, one was a close friend of mine who's passed away. She's not in the film, but she, for instance, her father was in the military and they were doing DNA exchanges. So, unbeknownst to his wife, they did some genetic altering when she was in the embryo. And so she has three different kinds of star being in her. And I remember one was reptilian. Now you have to remember they can remove the I'm not going to look like a reptilian gene,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just have that because they have a very, very advanced memory complex, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reptilians do. So she was her eyes were aqua. She looked different. Her skin kind of glowed a little bit, and her fingers were just a little different. She was the most benevolent, loving being I ever met. And, I'm so sorry that we lost her. But, that was interesting. I've met other ones who claim that they were brought here to live here and were assigned to parents and given money from our government to raise them as their own.
Okay.
Now, that's a whole nother interesting
Uh,
story,
Now, when they take
right?
this person, maybe this ET that's walking amongst us, if they have to take that person, do they make body doubles? I've been hearing so much about body doubles and
Yeah, well, they definitely can because they can clone. Their cloning, capabilities is quite good. But you have to remember, in the fully conscious world, they don't do anything that is going to offset the balance, right? So cloning somebody would not be in their wheelhouse, but maybe cloning somebody because maybe something was going on with that body and they needed a new one, right? And so they cloned it and then they were able to move the soul over into the new body. Now, I've heard advanced healings and things from contactees that where that the beings had told them that, let's say, if somebody was sick, right, like a starseed, and because they do have doctors for starseeds, by the way, right, that oversee all the starseeds on Earth. And what they can do is they can go back to an earlier time in their life, take that etheric blueprint, move it over, and put it inside the current body so that the body readjusts to becoming fully well,
Mhm. Now
right?
yeah, you mentioned the reptilians. They shapeshift also. There's a lot of shapeshifting going
They
on.
do. They do.
Yeah, could you tell us anybody who is a real reptilian who shapeshifts that you know of, Craig?
Well, I've known some people, I'll tell you some stories that I've heard because these are more interesting than just giving you a generic thing about reptilians. But just know this, no matter if you're a reptilian, a human, a gray, an insectoid, whatever you are, there is good and bad in every race.
Mhm.
So don't judge the race, judge the individual if you're going to judge them, right?
Mhm.
So, so there's that. But we do know there was a woman that I knew who was very connected, and she was an artist that drew people's experiences, and she could tap into it, tell you exactly what happened, and the person would confirm it. And she said that she met a guy, he was like in his 20s, and he was constantly being visited by a male reptilian, and that he was a reptilian where before his incarnation here, and that they were lovers, and that here on Earth they actually had sex
Really? Wow.
every time because this guy only saw the love that he had for this being. Now, I don't know if he was a female in his last lifetime or what, but you have to remember, the higher up you go, the male female thing goes away. It's the soul, it's the merging together
Mhm.
of energies that is the actual um inoculation, or
I'm
the
I'm glad you
you
said
know
that, Craig, because in my new book, Sci-Fi, that's how I have them making love is by
yeah,
merging souls and spiritual.
merging.
Yeah,
You're absolutely
and
right.
it's more beautiful that way. And you're drinking a blue liquid. I think the Palladians drink a blue liquid or something.
Yeah, no, it's just water. See,
Water. It looked blue. Okay,
yeah,
your background kind of colored.
yeah, with my background I look
All
blue.
right, that's it. Okay, but these but you're fascinating. Let me tell you, you're already starting to blow my mind. And I've listened to a lot of people, and you have these bits and pieces that I haven't heard. But Uh, I don't have any recollection of those 6 years in a row on the same date, August 11th, August 12th, that they froze me at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't have any recall on any of that. No, no
Right.
lucid dreams or anything. So sometimes they erase your mind, and sometimes they mess up and don't erase at all. Is that true, Craig, on a lot of these abductees?
It's true. If you really want to remember, you can, right? By just every time you're meditating and as you learn to go deeper and deeper, you can unlock it and you can see it, or
Mhm.
you could go to a very highly advanced psychic medium, who deals with extraterrestrial stuff, and they can, find it and unlock it as well. And then sometimes I say it's better to just leave it locked,
Really?
right?
Because it would scare
Like,
you?
yeah, because if you were supposed to know, then, maybe it would upset your life path here, when doing it. So, but primarily anybody who has had, these kind of visitations, it really is to advance them in their spiritual enlightenment
Mm.
so that they can merge their light and dark, so that they can now, their heart now rules their mind and not the ego ruling the mind. So instead, it's no longer service to self, me, it's service to humanity, and then cosmic humanity as
Right.
well.
Most people you've interviewed, Craig, I started at 13 and I still get some paranormal or some kind of activity that reminds me that they're still around. And
Yes.
I got this book that tells all the details about all my abductions and parts of the memories that I can come up with. And these are lucid dreams in which
Mhm.
tapped into my consciousness. And
Lucid dreams are real. You were there if it's lucid.
really,
Your astral body went somewhere else and you were physically there in your astral body. And remember that your consciousness, right? It doesn't differentiate between the astral body or a physical body or an etheric body. It's all part of all of those things. So you're still gaining that same experience when you're in this lucidity.
that's good to know because I've had some lucid dreams that I woke
Yeah,
up and I thought maybe I'd write them down, and I said
yeah,
no. I just threw the pencil across the desk and said no. I don't have to write them down. They're in here. They'll stay,
right.
there. And they do.
Yeah,
They never
they
go
do.
away. They're burned
Yeah.
in your memory. But these really bad people, have they killed anybody here on Earth, Craig, that you know of?
Well, I'll tell you the Calvin Parker case, right?
Mhm.
Calvin and his friend, who is an older gentleman, his name will come to me. Uh, this is like back in, I don't know if it's the
73, I
50,
think. Yeah.
73. I have them in the UFO hotspot book.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Philip Mantle was on my show here a while back, and he
Oh, Philip is great. He really helped me with this. And of course, Calvin did when he was alive. Charles Hickson and
right.
Calvin Parker. So, um, and this is Calvin when he was a young man.
Right.
And this is what he looked like when it actually happened. Now, um, so small story short, they're fishing at night. It's like a junkyard where they're fishing. People throw all their junk there. They're on a old steel pier, and all of a sudden they see this light coming in the distance, and it's coming closer and closer. They start to feel paralyzed, and then all of a sudden they sort of turn around, and where the car is parked, there's a ship, and then there's three conical robots that are floating, come out, they have conical noses and ears. They come out, they I believe they said it like they felt a needle coming out and sort of stuck them, which paralyzed them. They brought them on the ship. They were put in two separate rooms. And Calvin explain, excuse me, explain it to me that this ET, this woman, this is a woman, was the most evilest being he had ever seen, and he hated her so much. But he said that she had visited him many times before. And I said, well, Calvin, what does she look like? He said, nope, never going to say what she looks like, because if I say it, she'll come back. Right.
Wow.
So he, not even Philip Mantle knows what this being, this creature looks like. When I see her in my eyes, I just see her as a dark, sort of strange, like maybe part reptilian, part something else, not really quite sure. But, he said that she did heinous things to him. She pulled off his pants, she took things out. Um, Years later, I love Bud Hopkins during his day when he was writing all those books, taking people back in regression. He did regress Calvin. Philip allowed me to print the best bits in the UFO hotspot.
Mm.
So I did. And it was just, that man had fear in his eyes talking about that part for the rest of his life,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? For the rest of his life. And, people have no idea. You do, but people have no idea when these things happen to people, what it does to them. I've seen it destroy their lives because they're not physically or mentally able to cope,
Yeah.
right? They
What's
just
happened
don't
to me,
know.
Greg, and
Right.
I've been obsessed and
Yeah.
curious. What is going on? Who are they? And why are they doing this to me? And I was almost electrocuted 3 times in 3 different abductions. It was just static electricity, and it scared me to death. And it didn't hurt. It's just kind of like, you were petrified. You couldn't move. It's like sleep paralysis, but it wasn't, because I was wide
Right.
awake.
Right.
I was wide awake looking out the sunny door there. But I realized that a lot of people go through a lot of painful things. Like going through their navel. Now,
Right.
Greg, now women are a little different. When they take an egg from a woman, it's a little bit more, there's more to it. So they have to take them on board probably to take the egg out, Greg.
Yeah, they do. Actually, one of my dear friends, um, and this is actually how I met her, because her manager knew me well, and she called me and says, I have a client who has dreams of being abducted. She hasn't had sex, and now she's pregnant.
Mm.
And I said, okay, well, let me talk to her. So I began talking to her about the experience. Now, what was interesting is hers were not grays, hers were humans, right?
Mm.
And what we took away from that is, after a little before 3 months, she woke up in the middle of the night, and there was blood all over her nightgown and her bedspread, or her sheets,
Mhm.
and she was no longer pregnant. And so we figured out that um, this was her mate from back home, just like that one I was telling you about with the reptilian. And he wanted a piece of her, and she had agreed to that. And she felt like that was correct. So he then, then they, put the child in an incubator, and then, until it gets to the right gestation, they know how to do all that stuff. And then, and now he's raising that child up there, but he has something of herself. It's the same with the Elizabeth Clarer incident, where where her mate from, his name was Archon. I think the planet might have been Archon. She's a most fascinating um, uh, contactee story, Elizabeth Clarer, Klarer. There's books. They finally got a book out about her on Amazon. And basically, he would come back to be with her, and they would make love and all of that. Eventually she became pregnant, and so she was here. But because the baby had so much of his genetics, they had to take Elizabeth back to where he was so that she could birth the baby there. And then the baby stayed with him. And then they brought her back here until she passed away. She's done many interviews. I think she was South African.
Hmm.
Um, Many interviews online that you can see at her various ages.
Hmm. I know with
So,
men, when they take semen from a man, uh, it's a little hose, and they use some kind of
right.
device to I guess to trigger.
Stimulate. Yeah, to stimulate.
And
Yes.
I didn't know where to go with that. I didn't want to get too sexy,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's I've seen that little brown hose a couple of times going into my groin area, and I
Yeah.
woke up, try to kick it away, and then they put me back out. But yeah, I so that's how I know a little bit about that. I don't know the woman's side of it. I've interviewed a lot of women who's went through some really bad, horrible dreams, after effects, lucid dreams about what has happened to them. I guess they had some pain with needles in their stomach and things of that nature.
Yes, they're like Betty Hill
Yeah.
before they did amniocentesis. Synthesis, is
Scientists.
that how you say it?
Yeah.
They put a needle through her belly button to see if she was pregnant. This is like years, way before Kathleen Martin says, who is Betty Hill's niece.
Right. I've
So,
just interviewed her about a couple of months ago. She's a
yeah,
great person. I've met her.
she's lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a beautiful
she's
person.
lovely.
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. Thyron, you wrote books about that. Who
Yeah,
is Thyron, Rick? Tehran? Tehran,
Tehran. Yeah. So this is book one.
right?
This is the autobiography of an extraterrestrial saga. I am Tehran. There's four books in this series, right? So I'll tell you how these books came about. These were the first books that I wrote when, I always say I was just this average valley guy, living in the San Fernando Valley. I had just finished working on Amazing Stories, and the show was canceled. And it's where I say my own amazing story began. I started having dreams, um, seeing three universal master teachers. Two were extremely tall with very elongated heads, and one was a female blonde woman. And I remember the first night, and I just sort of woke up. I was like, God, they were just so filled with love,
Yeah.
right? I didn't have any fear. And I went back to sleep and I forgot about it. And then it just kept happening night after night after night. And then after 2 months, then I started waking up in the dream, and then it was lucid. And it's a whole different feeling,
Yeah.
as you know, Dave.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is real. I'm now where they are. And I could feel the vibration, like, from their bodies.
Mhm.
And this went on for 2 months. And then the last 2 months was I would go through the first cycle, the second cycle, and then I would wake up in my bed and they would be standing at the foot of my bed in their astral bodies. And that's when I really started to take notice. I didn't know, I had no idea what was going on, but all I know is I felt this extreme unconditional love coming from them. And my body would just ring with this warmness, this
Yeah.
tingling, this
Yeah.
feeling like you never have experienced before,
And you don't want it to go
right?
away. Yeah, you don't want it to go
Right,
away.
right. And then the next thing after the 6 months is I again woke up in my astral body. I was floating in between them. They were in a circle around me. They had their hands like this, and they were feeding all of this gold, this white light with gold and silver into it, and it was going in and ballooning into my body. And And what that did was is it woke up all the cells in my body. And for the next 8 months, I started having recollections of the cosmos, my connection to it, but my connection to every living thing on earth. So if I met a person in my casting office and I could feel their entire soul history, and if it was so beautiful to me, I had to excuse myself because I would go in the other room and I would sob.
Really?
So I sobbed every time I saw these beautiful things. It could have just been, I remember once was just a ladybug that came and landed on me. And I just couldn't believe the thought and the creation that went into create that beautiful little creature,
Mm.
right? And the plants and just everything. And to realize all that, and then I started to remember things my mom would say to me when I was a kid. She would like be eating a peach or an orange or something. And she goes, "Isn't it amazing that God made all of this just for us?"
Mhm.
When you really think about things in that and not just take it for granted, yes, there was a way that all of this was. So anyway, I went through a 2-year waking process where I went from 0 to 100. I had many, many more experiences than what I'm telling you. But in the end, I went to Mount Shasta to because I had written a book about all these experiences. It was at the end of the 2 years, and when I returned home, um, I was meditating, and one of the male master teachers, he said to me, "What would you say if I told you you just wrote that book for yourself?" And I said, "Then I learned a lot about myself." He says, "Now it's time for you to sit down and write the books that you came here to write." Right? Because
Mm.
my mother always told me when I was a kid, the minute you were in my tummy, I knew you came here to be a writer, right? She
Yeah.
never like forced it on me. She would just share it.
Mhm.
And so I sat down, I got a legal pad, and back in those days we didn't have computers and or word processors for that matter. And I began writing. He said, write and write and write. Don't stop, don't edit. Write until you can write no more, right? And there were words I didn't know what they were, but I would spell them as best as I could. And when it was over, I would say, "What did I spell that right? No, this is how it's spelled. You can look that up in the dictionary."
Yeah. That's
And I did, and there it was. And every time it would just blow me away. But at that time, then I had three portals in my little one-bedroom apartment, one in the living room, one in the hallway, and one at the foot of my bed. So I could always see their energy forms coming down. And when I would write, lots of these masters would come through and they would come stand behind me. And my body, I'm not kidding you, Dave, would ring with chills for 15 minutes because their energy was so high. You just feel the room buzzing
mm,
like this. And it took me quite, a while to get acclimated to that energy. Now I just telepathically speak to them and they telepathically speak to me. And that's how my writing process is.
that's a
If I'm writing about a specific character, like in I Am Tehran, Tehran came to me after those 2 years, and that's how I came to know him. These are his stories, but the beings that came to wake me up are part of his life,
mhm.
which is really fascinating. And
Iran.
he's
What?
a
Yeah. Was
yeah,
he human, Craig?
he's a human Pleiadian,
Okay.
and he's 7'7". He's got long, long, long blonde hair. He's like what a true Pleiadian looks like. He has an incredible personality. Um, and what the two very tall master teachers who had the very elongated heads, what they came to teach me was about duality. I had no idea. I heard the word duality, but I didn't know what duality really was. And so that's what they came um, to teach me, among many other things. But this duality is tied to Tehran because Tehran, in a fully conscious universe, was born dualistic. One in every 200,000 beings up there are born dualistic. This is so that the dualistic being will have fully conscious beings to learn and react from. And so that the fully conscious beings will have a dualistic being to learn how dualistic people act,
Well,
right?
yeah,
And
what a
that
great,
kind,
yeah, well, what a great experience have these entities
yeah,
coming in and talking to you and pushing
yeah,
you and helping you. I just get the message the last few years, just do it, silly. Just go ahead and keep
mhm,
doing it. Do your enlightenment stuff and get this word out. That's what I get from it. But you
yeah,
have a fascinating, that's how you got started, and that's why you're into the
right.
movies and the writing. You're a phenomenal person. I mean,
All,
yes,
all of, all
supported.
of that, yeah.
Yeah.
But Tehran's story is he eventually becomes a professor at the University of Melchizedek, and his job is to teach fully conscious beings who are coming to Earth on what to expect in being a star seed.
Mm, okay.
So he's the sort of the head of the program. So you get to see how all of that works and how he, over the course of the first three books, becomes fully conscious. So the reader learns how to become fully conscious right along with Tehran.
Melchizedek. Now, where's that? I
Yeah.
place it. Is that
Melchizedek is the spiritual university of our universe, and we call it the University of Melchizedek. It's 490 planets in the mirror system from one end of the galaxy to the other. They're called university spheres. Tehran works on University 22 and then on 23 for the advanced mighty messengers as well. And and then Father Melchizedek is the architect of the University of Melchizedek, and he works in union with Metatron and with Archangel Michael. And this is where the Living Light programs come through
let's see.
and that are dispersed into into the ethers here so that we then start picking these things up in our consciousness and we could make those choices because now we see how we can evolve and how we can better ourselves,
Right.
right?
I got a
And
couple of
we have that choice.
I got a couple of questions. You're fascinating. I know we can go on and on and on. We just went past an hour, and this is the Dave Emmons Strange reality show, and we're with Craig uh, Campobasso.
Campobasso, there you go.
So, and we are talking some fabulous stuff. I mean, some really interesting stuff. I got a couple more questions before we close up, I guess. You mentioned they come in a form at the end of your bed, and they are. Would you call that a holographic form, or how would you call that, Craig?
No, it's their astral projection.
Astro. So, what's the difference between the two?
Well, a hologram is projecting a holographic image of themselves.
Mhm.
And these beings are so advanced, they can project their
Yes.
full astral self
Let's see.
at the foot of the bed. So it's like looking at somebody in full living color, but you can see through them.
Right. I have one last question, and then and we get through this. This was the stranger at the Pentagon, Valiant
Yeah.
Thor, in the 50s. Now, I saw a picture back in 19, it was 44 or 45, and this guy they had a picture of, but he was a handsome guy, human, and he had a sister and he had a brother, and they were seated outside, I guess, the White House, and they were at a press conference, but these guys, they were like UK reporters, they weren't aliens. Valiant Thor, they said this is Valiant Thor, but then I saw him as a reporter. How true is that, Craig?
Never, ever heard that story in
Really?
my life. Yeah. He didn't arrive here until 57, right? Per Dr. Frank Strange's, who I knew for the last 8 years of his life. But if there were photos, I would love to see those photos,
There,
back then.
if you look up Valiant Thor, I guess on the internet is where I saw it, and there's photos of him sitting with his brother and the sister, and they were at a press conference.
Uh,
And it's
no, they're in a backyard. They're in Howard Menger's backyard.
really, and
That's where that is from, and that's from 1958. And that's Valiant Thor is a created being. So Dawn is born of man and woman. So he's his spiritual brother, and Jill with the blonde hair, that is his other vice commander, Zan's wife.
mm,
So they look at, they're like a tight knit family, so they would call each other brothers, sisters,
mhm.
that kind of thing. But Valiant Thor is in the angelic category.
And he apparently he didn't get very far with the Pentagon and the White House. Is that right, Greg?
Well, he came here. He was there for 3 years. He educated Eisenhower on a lot of the ways of the universe and what to expect. Um, he did try to. He gave him what we call a divine proposal, which was to eliminate sickness, disease, poverty, and prolong life. And interestingly enough, about 5 years earlier, Saul Ganda, a Venusian, came and gave the blueprints to build a building out at Giant Rock to George Van Tassel, who built the Integratron, which is if you walk through that building when it was turned on, it would rejuvenate your cells and you would stay looking young and it would prolong your life, which is very fascinating that these things were happening, in very close proximity. So, but at the end, like now, Nixon and Eisenhower were for this proposal. Um, but you have to remember the military industrial complex was just gaining its legs.
Mhm.
And they forced Eisenhower into a joint decision, and the joint decision was that he would have to turn down the proposal based on it would put doctors, nurses, pharmaceutical companies, everybody out of business, the power electric companies, all of that, because we'd have free energy
Right.
and we'd live longer lives.
Mhm.
Right. So that, of course, we look at that and say it doesn't make sense. But back then, it's it's always been about making the almighty dollar and
Right.
control. So
Money and greed. Yeah.
so they did turn it down. Dr. Frank was doing a 2 week um, speaking at a church there because he was a minister. And he's one night he spoke his specialty, and this particular night he spoke on UFOs and the Bible. And one of the ladies who was a secretary with a high clearance, um, Dr. Frank would talk about Valiant Thor at the end because he was friends with the guy who took the picture at the Menger farm. They all lived in New Jersey, and the Menger farm was in New Jersey. So he put that Valiant Thor picture on his board, and he would talk about George Adamski and show those saucer craft. And then he put the picture of Valiant Thor and just told the brief story of what he was told and let the audience make up the rest, if they wanted to believe it or not. And this woman approached him afterwards, and he said he wants to meet with you, pointing to Valiant Thor. And so she pulled him back into the pastor's office. She said, I will pick you up at 8 a.m. at your hotel and bring you directly to the Pentagon, which she did. He put him in an undisclosed office, took him to this door. And when he got to the door, he looked at it and he goes, oh my God, how am I going to get out of here? you know? And he said, the same way you came in, right? So he walked in, like the door opened up, and he could see people working here and here. And he stood there, he cleared his throat. Nobody said anything. As he shut the door, Valiant Thor was sitting in a chair behind the door and introduced himself. And then they had anywhere from, I think it was 20 minutes to a half-hour conversation. He let him examine his spacesuit, told him why he was here, and did tell him that he would see him again, right? And anyway, that's the short part of the story.
Right.
And then Valiant Thor left on March 16th, 1960, and he returned 1 year later. He's been here ever since. He has a fleet of saucer craft called Victor class saucers, and his is called Victor 1. That's what you see behind me here. That's the actual poster.
Mhm.
I have all these posters, by the way, for sale at stranger@thepentagon.com. And then this is my short film poster that I made of it. And now I'm getting ready to make the feature length film of Stranger at the Pentagon. People can see the short film on Amazon Prime, or they can go to strangeratthepentagon.com and watch it there. Um, and anyway, so Dr. Frank was friends with him all the way through his death in 2008. And, I met him in, I think, 2001 or two, I can't remember. Um, and, the last several years of his life, um, I sat with him every week, and he would just tell me all of his stories throughout all of the years. And that's how I compiled the script for the feature film
Mhm.
and all of that. But then, of course, one of the beings who had appeared to me, but I didn't know her name um, until I met Dr. Frank some 10 years earlier, was his Vice Commander Teal, who was a part of um, helping in my writing. So I would see them, I would feel them, and then I would feel their feeling body inside my body. So I would write from their perspective. It wasn't like they're possessing me. It's a form of telepathy that they do, that it's not just talking mind to mind, it's exchanging the feeling
Right.
behind what you're saying,
The
right?
essence.
So anyway, so that was very warming for me. And she's really quite amazing. I was in the hospital once. I'd gotten a bowel obstruction, um, and I was in bed for 3 days. A friend rushed me to the hospital. They admitted me. They were going to operate on me the next day. Only my one friend who took me knew about it. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I felt Teal standing over me. And she said, um, "You're going to be just fine in the morning." And I started to feel all of these little tiny bubbles going through my
Yeah.
intestines, right? And so I went back to sleep, and I woke up in the morning, and Dr. Frank is sitting by the side of my bed. And he said, "Teal called me early this morning, woke me up, told me to get down here to tell you that she fixed you up last night."
Oh, that's a great story. I mean,
Isn't that a great
it
story?
is. I mean,
So,
my
I
goodness,
mean,
you
yeah,
yeah, you've been there close. I admire what you've been through and what you've done and what you're doing now.
yeah.
Now Thor, he's supposed to be from Venus. It's kind of hostile there living there. I mean, you can't live on
Well,
that.
they live on the interior of the planet. All the planets in our solar system are populated on the inside. What they do is they have technologies where they can terrace it out into floors. So they're sort of like living spaceships, if you will,
Mhm.
right? If they go to another planet, for instance, they have a way through energy where they can expand underground and build their base there really quickly, or put their ship in there really quickly, right?
Mm.
And then when they leave, they can condense it back to its original form. So now here's what I believe. I know that Venus was a stop off point for him while he was awaiting to get the commission to come here. He knew he was, but Dr. Frank said that he told him that he was waiting for many years until he was finally told that to come, right? And then there were beings that were sent ahead to a military base to alert the president that of this date he will arrive, the universal emissary,
Mm.
right? So they did know, also that he was coming. But again, I say to myself, well, where does a created being come from, right?
Mm.
Do they have a planet of origin? Do they, right? I mean, usually we know a lot of the angelics and stuff come from the Isle of Paradise. So my assumption would be that that would be his original home. But these angelics, like him, they're given sectors of the universe to oversee, and they go back and forth to the different planets when there might be squabbles or whatever, because they have the where to and the know-how how to end these things, very amicably,
Mm.
right? So he is in charge of our part of the universe, but really specifically here guiding Earth into its ascension progression at the moment.
Yeah. So what's going on with all the chaos? Is he handling this, or is he working with it?
Well, here's the thing. There's more chaos than we would even know, right? And that I know in the past that they have handled some of that. Like for instance, I'm not saying Valiant Thor did, but what was the big, was it Fukushima in Japan?
Yeah, Fukushima.
Yeah, when it all went off, the reactors,
Mhm.
right? So I was watching a thing online from a show, and they all were in hazmat suits, and they were showing that it was like the radiation was like over 3,000. It was like way up there off the scale. And then they saw some ships come in, and they were shooting beams down into those big cores. And then they took another reading, and it went way down considerably low. So I do believe that a lot of the fully conscious beings are here to help, because that could do a lot of damage to people, the planets, the
Right.
ecosystem,
They don't want
um,
that. They don't want nuclear.
all of that. And we know that they have gone and turned off nukes
Yeah.
at all the military bases. So they're saying, we can do this. Don't start a war, because we'll be the ones to end it for you, right? Because they're not going to allow any of those things to happen.
Well, I hope so. And with Eisenhower, he never said a word about meeting aliens on the tarmac at this Air Force base or a Valiant Thor. He never did mention those outwardly, did he?
Nixon did later in life, but he didn't call him by name. It was sort of before he was resigning. I have all the paperwork. I can't remember the actual names involved, but when I come on your show again, if you remind me, I'll get it all,
Oh,
and
I'd love to have you back on the
I'll
show. I know
talk
that
about it.
there's a lot more
Um,
you talk about it. I'd love to have you back.
oh yeah, but that he did talk about this being that came here and that was, living and working, uh, at the Pentagon alongside the government, and that he had access to him. Actually, Dr. Frank told me that he was closer to Nixon than he was to Eisenhower, because Eisenhower was always busy,
Yeah, and he's a
right?
general, and a general. But
Yeah, exactly,
Nixon also
exactly.
showed Jackie Gleason, and which was a
Oh
golfing,
yeah, that's right.
showed him some aliens at a Florida Air Force base, I think.
That's right.
Yeah. So next,
That's absolutely right. So,
one
you
more
know,
last questions. And who runs the moon base, Craig?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I began hearing those things with Howard Menger and all the beings, the humans that he was in contact with throughout our galaxy. He did say that they did take him to the moon in one of their ships, and that he did see the city on the dark side of the moon
Mhm.
where a lot of people lived. Um, in our documentary, there's a gentleman where we're talking about the reptilians when they landed on the moon the very first time. This one particular person who we're talking about, I don't want to give his name out because the documentary's not out yet, but he was watching the live feed as the astronauts were talking. And I believe he said that one of them said that there were giant, massive ships there,
Yes.
and that this man who was there watching it on the live feed said, "You think that's your moon? That's not your moon." You know, he
Mhm.
said that where he was working, that there were Nordics working undercover because they were here helping us to build space arcs to help rid ourselves of our shared reptilian problem.
Right. Yes.
Right, so we know, we know on the dark side of the reptilians that they know how to go in and take over a whole planet without that planet even knowing.
Yeah.
Right, where they've got their resources, they can abduct, they could do this, they can do that, they know how to do it, and they know how to do it. One scenario that I've heard about is they send the little evil grays in first to meet with the government, and um, and then they say, "Great, we'll give you the technology to get way up out there into space. We'll give you this, we'll give you that, we'll give you all of these things if you let us live underground on
Right.
your earth." So now they've been invited,
Mhm.
and there's nothing that beings like Valiant Thor, or I call it the Galactarian alignment of space peoples and planets, right? I know a lot of people call it the Federation because of Star Trek,
Right.
but that's how they told it to me. And that, um, uh, so it's, I don't know, it's, there's just like, there's so much. And again, it's hearing stories, but even I just, I share the stories because they're interesting.
Mhm.
I can't prove them, I can't say that they're absolutely true, but we know there's some thread of truth somewhere.
Yeah. I've heard of the corrupt underground, I guess, people mixed with reptilians, and also the cabal. And
Mhm.
they even talk about having the Pope is involved in a lot of this elitism around the world. And the reptilians are running this thing, and they're puppeting our leaders, and they eat people. Have you heard all that, Craig? Is that
I have, yes,
I've
I
been
have.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I
I don't want to
mean,
believe that, but it's out there.
I don't either, but there's been a lot about that, and I did see some information once, and I don't know how true it was, but they found a crash ship, and on it, I think it was a gray ship, but on it were a lot of human body parts.
Yeah, this is for entertainment purposes. I have to say that for the platform
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
it's an opinion, it's a hearsay.
It's an opinion and
Yeah,
hearsay.
yeah,
Again, I can't prove it.
mm,
I'm just saying this was
that's
in
me too. I
some
hear.
stuff, So what we don't know is, is the government or little secret things putting this stuff out into the consciousness to put fear into people, to do all that kind of thing. I always say to everybody, really, the force that's here is good, right?
Mm.
If you're a good person, it's not going to be attracted to you, right? And that you should just be working on yourself spiritually every day so that you elevate your spiritual sustenance so that you can merge your light and dark, and then just use your heart to rule your mind and your daily life. And then you will have no more opposition. You understand things um, from a higher perspective, and nothing bothers you anymore. And you see that in some cases you can let a little expansion of time and something that may be going on in your life so that everybody can heal instead of going in and trying to fix it all,
Right.
right? You have this discernment now of time frames and everything to do it in. You know, when I was younger, I just wanted to fix everything right away and so I'd feel better, right? But really, it's about everyone feeling good
Peace,
about the
yeah,
outcome.
peace, love, and kindness.
That's
And
right.
you're an amazing person. You're doing the enlightenment. You're getting people up on the knowledge of what's going on,
Yes.
and I appreciate that. And that's what I try to do, probably in a smaller frame than what you're doing. But I'm trying to get that enlightenment and that knowledge out there to
Yeah,
people.
me too.
And peace, love, and kindness. I run into a lot of those people, and I since I'm an experiencer. I know a lot about this stuff. I don't have to be told that there's UFOs and this and that. I know they're here, and I know, but I don't know exactly what they're all doing. And you explained a lot of it. You did, and a lot
Right.
of
There's
puzzle
all
cases.
different agendas.
Yeah.
There's all different agendas.
Okay.
There's neutral agendas. They're even here just studying our planet and nothing to do with us.
Yeah. Okay. I think
You know,
we're going to end the show on that one. I'm not going to keep you. We went.
beautiful,
We got to.
beautiful.
Yeah, we got to the hour and a half, and I really loved this conversation. You really put the pieces of the puzzle out there, and I hope everybody enjoys this. You've been listening to Dave Emmons' Strange Reality and Craig Campobasso.
Campobasso.
Well, Campobasso.
Yes. And
And
the website is autobiography of an ANET.com if you want to get any of my books, and I'll sign them for you.
I'll have it in a narrative.
Beautiful.
I have
Thank
a
you.
lot of your links in here, and
Oh,
I will
perfect.
put them out. Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Craig,
All right.
and thank you. And good night. It was
Beautiful.
nice. I'd love to have you back. It was a blessing having you on today. Let me tell you that. And you're a
Thank you.
very progressive person, and I appreciate that too. All righty. Good night to
Thank you,
everybody.
Dave. Good
Thank you.
night.